to welcome you all to a lecture by a renowned personality, Professor Sukhadeo Thorat, wherein he aims to enlighten us on the economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The Economics Association of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee College for Women is known as Econtrics. By offering an ideal environment for showcasing talent and intelligence, it has sought to and still works to unleash the potential of students. The organization has organized a number of activities that have boosted students' self-esteem and allowed them to focus their energies on positive endeavors. We aim to support students in going above and beyond every day in the future as well. We believe that your active involvement and engagement will undoubtedly help you shape your own thoughts, providing an ideal space for growth. So I expect you all to put in your energies into understanding everything that would be shared. For smooth flow of the session, I request you all to keep your mic and camera off during the session. Asking a question is the primary source of leveling up your knowledge. And so I would expect you all to ask any questions you may have in the chat box during the lecture. Please mention your name along with your course and year. I would now request Madam Manisha Jain to welcome our guest speaker, Professor Thorat, our principal, Professor Sadhna Sharma, and IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shubha Sinha.
Thank you, Ananya. We'll just wait for a few minutes for a guest to join.
Yes, we should wait 2-3 minutes. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Jyotsna this side.
Hi, Jyotsna. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, sir?
I'm okay.
You are most welcome on this platform to enlighten our students. We are eagerly waiting for you.
Yeah, but my video is, am I visible?
Yes, sir. You are visible.
Okay, I can't see it. Yeah, okay. The advertisement is there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Manisha, carry on.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, is principal ma'am also there?
I'm calling her. She will join in 1 or 2 minutes, might be. You start.
Good afternoon, sir. A very good afternoon, good evening to everyone who are gathered here for today's session. On behalf of Department of Economics, I, Manisha, is privileged to extend my warm welcome to all presented here for a special lecture on economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar under the aegis of IQAC. Since Principal Ma'am is on the way, I'd like to introduce our guest for today here. That is Professor Sukhdev Thorat, sir. Sir, on behalf of our college, we have our IQAC member, Dr. Shubha Sena ma'am, with us at the moment. Ma'am, are you there?
Yes, Manisha, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, so on behalf of the Department of Economics, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. So, Sir is an economist, educationist, writer, and professor at economics at Jawaharlal University. Sir has been chairman of the University Grants Commission and Indian Council of Social Science Research as well. Currently, Sir is chairman at Indian Institute of Dalit Studies, New Delhi. Sir has also been recognized with the Padma Shri in the field of literature and education. Sir, it is very difficult for us to express appreciation towards your distinguished works that you have done in a very few words that are there. So today, Sir will be sharing his insights on the economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar became a key figure in India's constitution-making process. His economic expertise covers public finance, monetary economics, agricultural economy, and activities of uplifting downtrodden socially and economically. So I am not a very right person to speak on his behalf. So without further delay, I would invite Professor Thorat to share his insight and enlighten the young minds present here today. Sir, please share your screen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I think I am visible now. Yeah.
Yes, sir, you're visible.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of you, and I am happy that. Am I sufficiently audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
नहीं चल रहा, मैंने कुछ नहीं आया.
May we please request everyone to keep muted?
Sarabjit ji, please mute everyone except for sir.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. I am happy that Jyotsna has been pursuing me for quite some time for this particular lecture on Dr. Ambedkar's economic thought, and I am happy that finally we have been able to decide on the date and come together. Well, the topic of the discussion is Dr. Ambedkar's economic thought. Now, let me, in the introduction, then share with you what are we going to cover in this particular theme. Many of you know that Dr. Ambedkar was by profession, he was an economist. If you look at his academic background, he did his PhD in the provincial finance from the Columbia University in 1916. Later on, he moved to London School of Economics and did his DSc on problem of rupee, that is exchange rate issue. And his MSc thesis was also on provincial finance and the power of taxation and expenditure between the center and the state. It is this MSc thesis that he extended further and submitted for PhD. And both the books were published in 1924-25 by King's publisher from London. So that's how he began his career as an economist. Very few among the economists who have done their PhD from outside in the early period. Then his economic writing continued. And immediately after he came back from London, he wrote a paper in 1918 in Indian Economic Journal when he was a lecturer in economics in Sydenham College. Now, that paper is very important. That paper laid down the theory of economic development within the Indian context, but it is a theoretical paper. Laid down the economic theory of agriculture development in particular and economic development in general. In between, he has written on several economic issues, problem of small farmer and certain feudalistic institution in Maharashtra like Khoti system and Maharvatan system, against which he was not in favor. He raised a number of issues for the farmer and the worker in the Bombay Presidency Assembly. But the major event which occur about the economic writing and planning is in 1942-46. So after 1918, in 1942-46, after 22 years, he was a minister in the British government, Labour minister. And in 1945, the British government had laid down a plan, what is called rehabilitation plan or reconstruction plan. After the war was coming to an end, Second World War. So Dr. Ambedkar played a very important role in framing of reconstruction economic plan. So he expressed his view on economic planning, strategy of economic development, strategy for the labor, strategy for the scheduled caste. So that is the third landmark which gives us opportunity to understand his view. And I brought out a book on this particular period, this 3-year period, capturing his role in the economic planning, as well as his thought on economic development. And then in 1947, he submitted a memorandum to the Constitution Assembly when he was the chairman of the drafting committee, state and minority. And in state and minority, he expressed his view about the economic system, capitalism, socialism, communism. And so therefore, we get an opportunity to see his view on economic system. On economic system, he also spoke at 1 or 2 places. These are the 4 events. His PhD and DSc thesis, MSc thesis, his paper in 1918, and in 42-46, his views on economic development and planning. These are the landmark of his economic writing. And of course, state and minority, where he suggested he preferred certain kind of economic system. This is one aspect which I will discuss with you. But the most important, equally important aspect is that from 1919 onward or 1920 onward, he has been suggesting policies for the empowerment of the scheduled castes. At that time, it was called depressed classes in 1920. And he has been suggesting the policies for the scheduled castes, but these policies were suggested and based on his economic analysis of caste system. Of course, the social and religious analysis of examination of the caste system from the point of view of social principle, economic principle, and religious principle. But there is a very important aspect where he has examined the economics of the caste system, the principle on which the economic system is based, economic system of caste is based. So economic analysis of caste system is a very important contribution which led to formation of policy for the depressed classes. And therefore, I will share with you this aspect. Thus, these are the two aspects that I will share with you. Namely, to his views on economic development, theory of economic development, then his view on strategy of economic development, which he implemented in 1942-46, and the planning for labor, and then, of course, the economic system, and then we come to the economics of caste system. So let me begin with his theory of economic development. His two books, Problem of Rupee, which deals with the exchange rate, and his PhD thesis, which deals with the provincial public finance, taxation and expenditure. These are both the books related to a historical time. So they have their relevance today to some extent, but they deal with the historical issue. The major paper of 1918 deals with the how to develop agriculture, how to have an economic development. So I will deal with that paper as a beginning. As far as the exchange rate problem of rupee of his book is concerned, which has now completed 100 years, there are people who are organizing conferences on problem of rupee because it was published in 1923, so 100 years. 2024 is again 100 years for his PhD thesis also. Now, in his DSc thesis, he dealt with the exchange rate between rupee and the pound at that point of time, and he argued that the exchange rate fixed by the British were to the disadvantage of the India, and therefore he had proposed certain exchange rate between pound and rupee. Finally, the Royal Commission, which came here to have his opinion of the Indians, accepted the exchange rate submitted by the people, by the British government. When the Royal Commission came to see Dr. Ambedkar, or Dr. Ambedkar was invited to meet them, Dr. Ambedkar went there, he found that his book, Problem of Rupee, was in the hand of all the members because it deals with the exchange rate. So the exchange rate was fixed as per suggestion by Ambedkar. That's the only relevance of that book is as far as the book is concerned. There are certain points in that how do we fix the exchange rate? And his argument is that the more valued exchange rate, that is the more rupees per dollar or per pound, has an adverse impact on the internal inflation and prices, and therefore it is detrimental to the poor. So that is one important point which comes from him, from his book. But later theories also talk about this. But one of the important points that led to some development from that book was that he had suggested the central bank for India. At that time, there was no central bank. There was Imperial Bank, which was converted into a state bank later on, that used to deal with certain international functions, but there was no proper central bank, the way Britain had the Bank of England even today. He suggested the need of central bank similar to that of Bank of England. And 10 years later, then in 1935, the Reserve Bank of India was set up. So that was one of the very important contribution of Dr. Ambedkar. Similarly, if we come to his PhD book, there he dealt with the power of taxation and expenditure between the center and the state. At that time, there were princes and provinces, princely state and provinces, presidencies. There were 3 presidency, Bombay, Madras, and Bengal presidency, and there were about more than 50 princely states. And they had their power for taxation. Now, Dr. Ambedkar took a position that the power of the provinces was very weak and the power were exploitative. And a lot of revenue was generated by the central government at the cost of the provinces. So those are some of the points that he pointed out. And this thinking of his, as a matter of fact, helped then to bring those provisions in the Indian constitution later on. So that is the significance of that PhD thesis. But another significance of the PhD thesis is that Dr. Ambedkar has also recommended setting up a finance commission, which will yearly decide the sharing of taxes and expenditure and income through taxes by the central government and the state government. Now we have a provision, as you know, that we have a finance commission which is set up after every 5 years. We decide the power of the state and power of the center to impose the tax, and the taxes which are imposed by the center, how they should be divided between the state and the center. That is laid down by the finance commission after every 5 years. Now, setting up of a finance commission was at the behest of the recommendation of Dr. Ambedkar. So these are the relevance of these Ambedkar's early 2 books. About taxation also and expenditure also, Dr. Ambedkar had a view at that point of time that there should be more expenditure on the public services like education and health, and less expenditure on defense. And taxation should be progressive. As the income level goes up, the rate of taxation should also increase. So these are some of the lessons from Dr. Ambedkar's earlier writing, 2 books, which in a way are historical. Now, but most important, I think, is his 1918 paper, as I suggested to you. Now, 1918 paper is laid down as an economic theory, as a theory of economic development in general, and agriculture development in particular. Now, let us look at what is the argument of that paper is. The main argument of that paper is that at that time the issue was that why productivity in agriculture was low, and why income of the farmer was low, and why poverty was high. That was the issue at that time. There was a general thinking that the farm size is very small, and therefore farm size should be increased, because the economic understanding was that the large farmers are efficient. The productivity output per acre is high on the large farmer as compared to the small farmer. So we should increase the size of the land. And therefore, a legislation was brought at that point of time, even by the Britishers, that let us have a consolidation of land through artificially, bringing the different land together and increasing the size. Redistribution of land and making the size of the land larger. We had also one of the land reform after 1950, ceiling unholding, tenancy legislation, and consolidation of holding was one of the measure. Now, Dr. Ambedkar in his paper took a different position. He argued that, increasing the size of holding by law is not a correct approach. There is the economics of agriculture development, and we should follow that economics, which will also lead to increase in the productivity of agriculture, per hectare productivity, per worker productivity, and thereby it will reduce the poverty. Now, Dr. Ambedkar's analysis at that time of agriculture, which is equally true today, and we have used in certain way, is that agriculture production is a function of factor of production. As an economic student, that the agriculture production is a function of certain factor of production. The important 2 factors is labor and capital. Labor, we know, human labor and bullock labor. And capital is in the form of seed, fertilizer or manure, irrigation, and implement. So we use this input, labor and capital, in certain combination. And there is one particular combination of the input which give you maximum output per acre. So the input have to be used in a balanced way, and you have to achieve a combination of input which give you maximum output. If you use less of labor, more of capital, or more of capital, more of labor, less of capital, more of labor, then the productivity will be less. There is always as you learn in economics, there is always a optimum combination of the inputs which give you maximum output. That is the economic law. Now, Dr. Ambedkar argued, based on the situation at that point of time, is that in Indian agriculture in 1990, for example, the use of input was disproportionate, not in a optimum way. And what was that disproportionate method of use of input use? What he argued was that the labor was used more and capital was used less. So there was an underuse of capital in the form of seed, manure, irrigation, machinery, and implement, but there was more use of labor. The reason was, according to him, that there was idle labor, there was a surplus labor. You required certain amount of labor for agriculture, but you have more, because of overpopulation, you have more supply of labor, and therefore you use more labor, but you use less capital. As a result of which, the production is low, per hectare production is low, productivity is low. So his suggestion was, because I am cutting short now because there are many aspects that we have to cover of Dr. Ambedkar's economic thought, is that increase the use of capital, that is proper seed, use more of manure, use more of irrigation, use more of implement, mechanical as well as traditional implement, and reduce the use of labor. Because labor, 1 acre, 1 acre requires certain amount of labor throughout the day, but you are using more labor. As a result, the productivity is not increasing. So this is the suggestion of Dr. Ambedkar, that more use of capital and less use of labor, at least reduce the use of labor, have a right combination, productivity will increase. Now, the second question then he asked, how do you reduce the labor? Because there are people, 80% of labor population, or maybe 85% of population at that time was dependent on agriculture. Whatever is produced, everybody eat through that income. And income being low, the consumption is low, poverty is high. So, but how do you reduce the idle labor or surplus labor? The way out he suggested was that you have to shift the labor, siphon off the labor from agriculture to industry, so that the surplus labor is reduced in agriculture, an appropriate number of labor are used, and at the same time you increase the use of the capital input. Now, you can only transfer the surplus labor from agriculture to non-agriculture sector, that is industry and service sector, provided you have an industrial program of development, provided your industry expand. If industry expand, they require more of labor. So therefore, he suggested that industrialization is a solution to agriculture development. So focus on industrial development. The industrial development will require more of labor, draw those surplus labor from agriculture. So industry will also get a labor at a very low wages. So labor cost will be lower and industrial development will be possible. And you can draw the labor from agriculture so long the marginal productivity of labor is not become positive. You can stop at a point where the drawing of more labor will decline the agriculture production, but surplus labor you can take out and absorb into industry. And what will happen to agriculture by withdrawal of the labor? That the productivity of agriculture will increase if you use optimum labor, and also at the same time you increase the technical input like seed, fertilizer, manure, and irrigation. So the productivity will increase. Now, by reducing the pressure on agriculture, your land side will increase now. Less people will depend on agriculture. Land consolidation will take place. So the other economists who say that you require a law for land consolidation, Dr. Ambedkar say no. Agriculture has its economics. If you withdraw surplus labor from agriculture, less of people will depend on agriculture, and there will be increase in the size of land. Now, for example, in Europe and Western countries, the proportion of people depend on agriculture is 3 to 4%. That's why the land size is huge. So, and the productivity is high. So that was the suggestion of agriculture. To put it in brief, that to increase the productivity of agriculture, that is, for that purpose, you require reduction in the use of labor to the optimum level and increasing the use of the capital input in the form of seed, fertilizer, and irrigation. And you can modernize, you can use modern implement, you can use biotechnology the way we are using now. He talk about the biotechnology in 1920. So, and to enable that, industrialization is a solution for agriculture development. This is the theory of Dr. Ambedkar for agriculture development and also in a way industrial development. Now, friends, you are a student of economics, you know that in the second 5-year plan, we in fact adopted this kind of approach. Industrialization was our focus. And the argument was also there that we will withdraw the surplus labor from agriculture. Industry will get a labor at a minimum wages, and industrial development will be possible. So you can see that there are similarity what Ambedkar suggested and what was being implemented by in second 5-year plan. That is what is called Mahalanobis model of development. And in fact, if you are aware, some of those who are doing economics, you might have heard the name of Arthur Lewis. Arthur Lewis had developed a theory, economic development with unlimited supply of labor from agriculture. And he expanded it and he brought out a book, and I think he got Nobel Prize for that. One of the book contribution of that. But Ambedkar said that in 1920, there was only one British person, I don't remember his name now, who had talked about idle labor. But it is Dr. Ambedkar who took the concept of idle labor and developed a theory of economic development, which is even today relevant. 70% of our population and population is still in development on agriculture. A much higher proportion of worker on agriculture, and income is low, or whatever income is there, that is then distributed among the large section of population. Therefore, per capita income is low. If there is a per capita income is low, saving is low, capital investment is less. And if per capita income is low, you consume less, and poverty. So I think that the theory that Dr. Ambedkar gives was very important, and it's relevant today. I think the only person who has written about this and included his small holding paper is J. Krishnamurti. There's a book by J. Krishnamurti, a very famous labor economist. He was in International Labor Organization. He is in now Geneva. He settled down there. But he brought out a book of wherein he included 10 prominent economists of India before independence and who did their PhD from outside. So he included the small holding paper of Dr. Ambedkar in that book, and analysis also. Okay, now let us come to the second contribution and aspect of Ambedkar. That 22 years later, when Dr. Ambedkar became a Minister of Labor, at that time it was called executive member, but they were minister. There were only 8 ministers at that point of time in British ministry. And Dr. Ambedkar period was 1942-46. Now, during that period, as I suggested, the central government framed the rehabilitation plan. Now, what was this rehabilitation plan? That the Second World War was coming to an end. An Indian soldier who were fighting with the British against the Hitler, after the end of the war, they were coming back. Now, rehabilitation of this large number of soldiers was necessary. That is to give them the job. Secondly, there were many industries which were manufacturing defense material for the British, because it was a British government. Now, those industries would no more produce the defense good and implement. They will have to be converted into industries which will produce the other capital goods and consumer goods. So, therefore, a rehabilitation plan was prepared. For the Europe, it was called Marshall Plan. You might have heard about Marshall Plan. Now, what a committee was set up, a rehabilitation committee was set up by the British government. The member were all the minister, and there were subcommittees behind the reconstruction plan. I think some of the prominent economists like V.K.R. Rao and others were on the various subcommittees. But Dr. Ambedkar was the member of that rehabilitation committee plan. Now, what this committee did, rehabilitation committee, what it did very intelligently, that it renamed the plan as Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Plan. And the Committee of Rehabilitation and Reconstruction, it was called a Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Economic Plan. So it was like an economic plan. So in fact, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Economic Plan was the first plan for India in the British period, just before the first five plan. First five plan started in 1951, and this plan was in 1942-46, and Ambedkar was one of the members. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, being an economist, he played a major role in this economic plan at two levels. One, to set the goals and objective of the plan, and secondly, to let down the strategy of economic development. These were the two objectives in that plan. Now, all those who are interested to read this, there is a book of mine. I have written that book. Nobody knows about it at all, because this book is based on the file, original file from the Ministry of Labor at that point of time. So the title of the book is Economic Planning, Dr. Ambedkar's Role in Economic Planning and Water and Power Policy. It is brought out by CIPRA publication in Delhi. So there I brought out these various aspects. Now, to cut the story short, Dr. Ambedkar played an important role in laying down the goals and objectives of the plan. And those objectives were that we should have a balanced development of agriculture and industry. And the agriculture and industrial development is necessary for improving the well-being of the people. And therefore, a strategy was developed. Now, what is important is that the strategy that he proposed in 1918 paper, Economic Theory of Economic Development, exactly he applied that strategy here. He was an economist among the other ministers and top rank economists who had done PhD from Columbia and DSc from London. So he knew about it. So he played a major role. Now, so he laid down the objective that we will have a balanced development of agriculture and industry. And then he said that for development of agriculture, industrial development is very necessary. So we should have a focus on industrial development. And to enable the industrial development, we should develop the infrastructure like water, power, navigation. That is the main strategy that was brought in. For agriculture development, irrigation, and water and power; for industrial development, power, and there was several measures which were suggested for industrial development. So you will see that the economic theory of development, which he laid down in 1918 paper, he applied in actual practice in the Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Plan of 2014 to 2016, where he suggested those strategy. Now, I would not go into greater detail in that strategy, but there are two aspects which are very important. One is that Dr. Ambedkar was in charge of labor portfolio, but there were many portfolio under him, because there were only 8 ministers, and therefore each one of had 7-8 portfolio. Dr. Ambedkar had, beside labor, water and power, aviation. The Air India was with him at that point of time. Then DOPT, today's DOPT was with him. So several portfolio was there, but water and power was very important. Now, Dr. Ambedkar played a very important role, not only laying down the rules, regulation, and policies for labor. I will come to that labor policy later, but his major contribution is in development of water and power policy, because he thought that water and power is very necessary both for agriculture and industry. Agriculture requires irrigation, agriculture requires power. And if agriculture has to be more productive, irrigation area has to be expanded, power has to be expanded. So power will be useful both for agriculture and industrial development. Now, Dr. Ambedkar really worked hard and laid down water and power policy for India. Now, remember well that even in those days, water and power was a provincial subject. It was not a central subject. In the central government, there was only one irrigation advisor and power advisor. There was no ministry, there was nothing. Now, Dr. Ambedkar's contribution is Manifold. In fact, today's Water and Power Ministry was established by Dr. Ambedkar. That credit should go to him. Because he took three major decisions about water and power policy. One, that he for the first time laid down a policy for water and power development at the center. State had their own power policy separately, but at the center, Dr. Ambedkar framed the irrigation and power policy, number one. Number two, he created the administration and the offices. And he created what is called, at that point of time, Central Water, Irrigation and Navigation Commission. And that is today's Central Water Commission. And he set up Central Power Board or Commission. That is today's Central Electricity Authority. So he created the organization. But he did not stop with the creation of a policy and organization. He went ahead and began the construction of some of the dams. And the dam constructed and some beginning was made on some that include Damodar Valley Authority, Damodar Dam in Bihar, UP and West Bengal combined. Then the Hirakund, the famous dam. Ambedkar laid down the foundation stone and framed the entire earlier technical plan. Then Son River in UP. The dam is there in Son River. Then he had also invited the proposal for the valleys of Deccan for construction of dam. Now, this is such a massive work that he has produced. As a result, he was able to establish the Ministry of Water and Power Resources at the center. On the electricity fund, electricity was in the private sector. He created an organization, of course, Central Power Board, but he also laid down the policy. And in that policy, he nationalized the production and distribution of electricity. At that time, electricity production was in the private sector. It is Dr. Ambedkar who brought under the government control. So you can see how important role he played. But to talk very briefly on the policy of water and irrigation development and navigation development, there are 2-3 elements which are very important, which are even very important today. First is that he said that we should not exploit the water or build the dam only for irrigation purposes. We should build the water for multi-purposes. That is to have a water for irrigation, water for drinking water for cities, also hydroelectric generation, navigation. The multiple use of water through the dam was the concept given by Dr. Ambedkar and which continue even today. Then the other concept that he has given was that when we plan the dam on a particular river at one particular point, his argument was that we should plan in a manner such that the entire river basin development takes place. The water should be supplied to all the farmer, it goes to the city. Then you generate the hydroelectric power. That power is available to the cities and town for the industrial development, for agriculture development. And also he emphasized more on navigation. No other person has emphasized on navigation so much as he has, but we neglected navigation. So he developed the concept of multiple use of water. He also brought the concept of valley authority. You know how much fight takes place between the state today on sharing of water. At that time, the Damodar Valley Authority, dam on river, would include 3 states, Bengal, Orissa, UP, and Bihar. And to bring them together and to construct a dam whose water will be used by 4 states was a very difficult problem. You know how Karnataka and Maharashtra keep on fighting for water, and other states as well. So he brought the concept of valley authority, independent authority. That concept was taken from Tennessee Valley Authority from USA. In fact, one of the engineers from the USA was brought here. Now, the Central Water Commission was set up here in India, Central Irrigation and Navigation Commission. He brought Khosla, who was working on Bhakra project in Punjab. Bhakra Nangar project was coming to an end. So he invited Khosla and made him a chairman of the Central Water Commission. It is Khosla who prepared the technical plan, feasibility plan for Hirakund Dam. So what is important, I am telling you, in the policy, he brought the concept of multiple use of water resource development. He brought the concept of valley authority, and he brought the concept of development of the water basin as a whole. And this policy is continued today. When Dr. Ambedkar resigned from the cabinet in 1946, it was taken over, water ministry was taken over by Bhabha, and Bhabha made a huge appreciation of Dr. Ambedkar's contribution in laying down the foundation of water policy and thereby the ministry at the center. But we are concerned here as an economist is on the policy. On the power, he brought it under the public government. Now, this is the development thought of Dr. Ambedkar, which are even relevant today. And his contribution in economic development is very important. We don't recognize this. We don't realize this because we have not studied. We only talk of Ambedkar's role in Dalit empowerment, constitution making, and all that. But these are the areas which are unknown, that he played an important role in economic development of the country. The entire rehabilitation reconstruction plan was included in the first 5-year plan. After we got independent in 1947, this plan come to an end in 1946. It was carried into the first 5-year plan, but nobody recognized the importance of those people, that how they started the plan and which they borrowed in a way. I mean, Hirakund Dam and Mahanadi Damodar Dam. These were constructed by the beginning. Construction was made during this period, 46 period, which were later on taken by us in the first 5-year plan. In fact, the foundation stone of the Hirakund was done during Ambedkar period, but the actual construction started in 1955. And it is Pandit Nehru who went there and gave a very big speech about that these dams are our temple, that, temple being our dam, dam being our temple is the famous sentence by Jawaharlal Nehru. But that was done by Dr. Ambedkar. In fact, I must share with you that when Nehru went to that function and gave a speech for starting the construction of dam on Hirakund, it is a coincidence of history that Khosla, who was the chairman of the Central Water Navigation Commission appointed by Dr. Ambedkar, had retired. And he was the chairman, he was the governor of the Orissa, and he chaired that function. And it is a romance of the movement that after Nehruji spoke, Khosla spoke, and he said that, look, the foundation stone was laid down by us. That is by Dr. Ambedkar, and he has a major role to play. We are taking it forward. That is the history of irrigation development. Now, let me come to the third aspect, that in the rehabilitation and reconstruction plan, there is another approach, strategy, which we must understand today. That Dr. Ambedkar, while laying down the objective, he argued that we should have economic development, and that economic development means agriculture development and industry. And by economic development of industry and agriculture, we mean that income increases at a faster rate. And income increases means people's per capita income increases. Now, he gave another aspect of economic development strategy, that he said that the economic development should be such in terms of increasing the income in a manner such that it also increases the income of the poor and the poverty of the people reduced. So he talked about, at that very point of time, the poverty reducing growth. Now we are talking of poverty reducing growth and inclusive growth. Dr. Ambedkar talked about poverty reducing growth in 1946. We are talking now, you are a student of economics, and possibly you read this literature on inclusive growth, and there are phrases which come from World Bank. What are those? Share in the prosperity. The growth should be such that all share prosperity. Then no one leave behind. The economic growth should be such that nobody is left behind. These were some of those ideas which Dr. Ambedkar developed at that time in a very clear-cut term. He, in fact, there is a quotation of mine in that book. He said that our approach to economic development must change. we should know that why do we need industrial development? Why do we need agriculture development? Why do we need water resource development? He said we need it to increase the income of the poor and reduce the poverty and increase the well-being of the people. So this is very important, that concept of inclusive growth, inclusive development was conceived by Dr. Ambedkar at that time. In fact, the word inclusive is also used by him. This is the second point. The third point in economic development approach is that, according to him, that the government should not be laissez-faire government, that non-interfering government. In economics, we have that phrase, laissez-faire. No interference in the government. Let the private sector do whatever they want, because private sector then became efficient if there is no interference by the state government. Ambedkar said no. Dr. Ambedkar said no. The government role should be active, and government intervention should be there in providing infrastructure, in having education development, and many other things. That is the third important point of Dr. Ambedkar's approach, because there are people who talks about Ambedkar, I am Ambedkarite, I am this thing, that thing, but do exactly the opposite. So the positive role of the state is one of the aspect of Ambedkar's theory of economic development. The fourth, that is in the concept of inclusive development. He argued that the economic development should be such that it bring the improvement in the life of the labor, because he was a labor minister. And therefore, he undertook several policies, minimum wage, regulating hours, working hours, then job security, social security. These were the steps that he brought. Most important is the employment exchange. It's what Dr. Ambedkar who set up the employment exchange for the first time in Calcutta, so that it is egalitarian method. You create an employment office, everybody registered, and the private sector should take the application for any post from employment. This being a sort of fairness. So several steps were taken for the labor development. But in the inclusive development or inclusive growth, he argued that it should help the laborer. Now let me come to the second point, that about the economic system, last point, 4th point, before I go to economics of caste system, that during this period up to 1946, right from 1920 to 46, he suggested all economic policies and strategies within the framework of private economy. But in 1947-46, state and minority, he favored socialism. He was not a communist, but he favored socialistic economy vis-a-vis the capitalistic economy. So he proposed what is called state socialism. And in state socialism, he said that land should be nationalized and redistributed to everybody and cultivate collectively or individually. But the cultivator should be the tenant of the state, and state should help them. The purpose was to remove poverty and disparities. We know that under the caste system, a very large section of the population did not have a right to land. Therefore, and land reform were undertaken at that point, but Dr. Ambedkar was convinced that land reform will not help the untouchables and the lower classes. So he suggested nationalization of land, redistribution of land to landless in equal proportion, and cultivation of land through collective farms. And they would cultivate the land and pay the taxes to the state. Then he also wanted basic and key industry under the state government, which we have done in the second prior plan. All basic key industries were brought under the state government. Now, under the present, it is being privatized in a very big manner. Education, health, and insurance also, he suggested that it should be under the state ownership. So you can see that there is a significant change in the thinking of Dr. Ambedkar, that he moved away from capitalism, that is economy based on private ownership of means of production, to an economy partly owned by the state, and of course partly by the private. Agriculture, K and basic industry, education, insurance, health with the state. Rest of the sector, he thinks, will be in the private sector. So that is the view of Dr. Ambedkar on economic system. There are lessons of this view that can be talked later on. Now, the last point I'll take, and I'll stop before I take the question, is that the strategy of economic development that he proposed in 1942-46 was inclusive development, pro-poor development, and therefore pro-labor. But at the same time, he suggested that he should be pro-scheduled caste and pro-discriminated group, the group which are depressed and the group which are suppressed. The growth should also help them. Now, and therefore, he talked about the planning for the scheduled caste, separate planning for the scheduled caste. You know that now we have what is called special component plan for scheduled caste, a tribal sub-plan for the tribal. The idea of a special component plan of scheduled caste originated with Dr. Ambedkar's thinking in 1946. Within the overall plan, there should be a plan for the scheduled caste, or policies for the scheduled caste, policies for the labor. Now, Dr. Ambedkar has been proposing policies for the depressed classes or scheduled castes right from 1920. The main policy was, of course, twofold. One is that, the scheduled castes particularly did not have land, they are illiterate, they are without industries, and therefore they should be given land, they should be, businesses should be developed among them. Then there should be financial assistance for educational development. That is the general plan that he proposed for the development of the scheduled caste. But the first strategy that he asked was the fair share to the scheduled caste in public employment, in education, and in parliament. And that is what is called reservation policy. Because since the scheduled caste suffered discrimination in economy, in education, and in legislature, they need a reservation, they need a share through a policy of reservation. When Dr. Ambedkar talked about 1920s, there was no entry to the scheduled caste in military, there was no entry to the scheduled caste in police, there was their exclusion in the government service. So he asked for their share, and the reservation was one of the instruments. Similarly, he asked for the share in the legislature. So now, he got the political reservation in 1932 through Pune Pact. He got the reservation in public services and scholarship for the scheduled caste, overseas scholarship in 1944. We have a overseas scholarship now, even today, and post-matric scholarship. But what is the analysis which led him to ask for this reservation policy? And even the economic empowerment policy, land distribution, promotion of entrepreneur, and other things. The thing that led him to ask for this policy is his analysis of caste system. And I discussed with you very briefly, not the social analysis of caste system as such, but the economic analysis of the caste system, the economics of caste system, because you are the economic student. So you must understand what is the economic interpretation of caste system of Dr. Ambedkar, and how does it lead to the asking of reservation policy for him. Now, the economic analysis of the caste system of Dr. Ambedkar is given in so many writing of his, and I will briefly put before you. The first article in 1916 in Columbia University he wrote was on caste. Then he wrote an annihilation of caste in 1936. But basic analysis of caste system is in volume number 3, which was published in 1987 after Dr. Ambedkar's death. And you see in volume number 3, the economic analysis of the caste system in 3-4 essays. The main point of economic interpretation of the caste system of Dr. Ambedkar is as follows. Number one, that the caste system involved division of the people into 5 groups. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and untouchable. So population is artificially classified into 5 groups. How did it classify it? It has history, I won't go into that. Now, the Hindu social organization, namely the caste system, not only divide the people into 5 groups, it also allocate and assign rights. Social, religious, and economic right. But if we talk about economic right, those economic rights are such that they are based on the principle of inequality. Now, you know the traditional framework of the economic right. which is given in the Manusmriti. And not only in Manusmriti, but Rig Veda and all the religious texts of the Hindu. It is in Ramayana, it is in Puranas, it is in Mahabharata, it is in Upanishad. No Hindu text is there which doesn't mention the caste system as such. So what it does is that it fixes the occupation of these 5 castes. So Brahmin have the occupation of teaching and preaching, Kshatriya has defense, Vaishya has trade, Shudra has agriculture and peasantry, and untouchable has nothing. Their job is only to work as a casual laborer. So you can see that the occupation are fixed. But the third characteristics, economic characteristics of the caste system is that this right, economic right and occupations are fixed in an unequal manner and a graded manner, unequally graded manner, which means that as you go up in the caste, the economic right increases. Untouchable have nothing, but the Shudras have land. Vaishya has business, but they can also do cultivation. Kshatriya has defense confined to them, but they can also do trade and farming if they want. And Brahmin have teaching and preaching. But Brahmin can also be a cultivator and he can enter into business also. But the occupation were decided. Now they were decided in an unequal manner. Now the impact of this unequal assignment of economic right is that relate to the fourth characteristic, that it not only divide people into 5 groups, it not only assign the economic right, and it not only fix the occupation and economic right, but it does it unequally. Some have more, some have less. But the fourth characteristic said this is permanent. This is not supposed to be changed. Occupation are permanent for ages together based on your birth. Is fixed and hereditary. This is the important economic characteristics of the caste system, that the occupation and economic rights are fixed, property rights are fixed, including education, and they are not supposed to be changed. So caste system is in fact based on economic inequality, fixed and permanent and hereditary. That is why the lower caste who are without any economic right, particularly the untouchable who do not have any economic right, suffer the most from high poverty. But there is one more economic principle that we should understand as a student. This is never taught in the colleges. I don't think you are taught economics of caste system. Even in the university, it is not taught. The fifth feature is that as far as untouchables are concerned, they are not denied economic right alone. They don't have a right to property, they don't have a right to military, they don't have a right to trade, they don't have a right to agriculture, and their only job is to work as a wage laborer, the 4 castes above them, but they are also treated untouchable. Now, untouchable means what? Untouchable means the untouchables are treated as polluting caste, impure caste. And since they are treated polluting, they have to be isolated and segregated. So no social relation. Their residential should be away from the high caste. Now, even today, despite the 70-year of constitution, if you go to the villages, the residences of scheduled castes are separate and residences of high caste are separate. They are caste-wise residences. So isolation and exclusion of untouchable in social relation, in residences, and of course in economics is there. Now, because of untouchability, untouchables suffer additionally. Not only denial of economic right, but they suffer because of pollution and purity concept. Obviously, they being polluting, they are not to be touched. That is why the concept of untouchability comes. Untouchabilism, unapproachability. You cannot approach the high caste very close because you will touch. But there were several work which were debarred to them because of untouchability. One, you cannot employ them inside the house. You cannot employ them as a cook. Or many other, you cannot involve them in the work related to religious function, social function, cultural function. So as an untouchable, they are debarred from certain categories of work. Beside the fact that they do not have a right to land, defense, trade, agriculture. So the most worst impact of inequality in the economic right of caste system is on the untouchable. Worst possible impact that you could ever imagine. That is why they are most oppressed and depressed. There is a one point which was not mentioned, which Dr. Ambedkar mentioned though, but we have studied very recently, me and Amit Thorat, is that the untouchable worker, casual worker, which work for the high caste, were also not a free worker. That casual worker, you go work and come back, and you are able to change your occupation from one person to another person. No, they were attached worker, they were forced laborer. And now there is a sufficient evidence, there are books by Sanal Mohan from Kerala and other, that untouchable were slave worker. A slave worker is different from the casual worker, even different from attached worker. Slave worker means you are a property of the landowner. You can be sold, you can be purchased, your family can be divided, you can be given whatever the owner want. So the exploitation under slavery, the way the black slavery is there, is immense. And you have to read those books, how untouchable slavery exploited, like anything. Now, therefore, this is the economic analysis of the caste system, that a caste system economically, economic feature is that it is based on the principle of economic inequality, which deny economic rights, right to property, even it deny education right. Education, why the untouchables are most illiterate and less educated? Because they were denied right to education almost for 3,500 years. Education right was confined only to the Brahmin. And therefore, Brahmin benefited. When the Mughal came, they get into the Mughals bureaucracy. When British came, they enter into the British bureaucracy because they were educated. Untouchable could not go. Besides that, untouchable were debarred entry from education. But even if the entry was made open to them, they could not enter into the bureaucracy because they were not educated. So the consequences of economics of caste system are devastating as far as the untouchables are concerned. Education problem is also there of Shudra. So friend, that is why he suggested twofold strategy for the untouchable, which I share with you, that he says that there should be policy whereby we give them land and businesses. There should be a policy where we set up financial support to the scheduled caste in terms of scholarship and fellowship, and also reservation and education institution to pay them, to compensate them for denial of education right. And also they should have a share in the public employment, private employment. In normal course, they won't get, there is a discrimination. So you should have quotas. So policy of reservation in employment, education, legislature was conceived by him based on his economic analysis of the caste system. And therefore, this economic analysis is very relevant today because reservation is expanding. It began with scheduled caste, it extended with scheduled tribe, then it extended to OBC. They now extended to nomadic tribe, denotified tribe. It is extended to women to a certain extent. Now it is extended to economically weaker section. So reservation is extending beyond a limit now. The original idea was developed by Dr. Ambedkar. So friend, these are the thoughts, economic thoughts of Ambedkar, which I try to put together and share with you, which are written at different places, and we have to bring it together and present a perspective. I tried to do that, and I hope it has been useful to you, and some of you will go and read more about it. Thank you very much, Josna.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening all of us with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's ideas and contribution. We have been asked some thought-provoking questions in the chat box. So I request Dipali ma'am to come forward for Q&A session.
Thank you so much for inviting the question answer round. Thank you so much, Professor Thorat, for giving us your valuable time. So we'll proceed with the question answer round. We already have questions in the chat box. So I'll just read out to them one by one. The first question is coming from Abhishek Jaiswal. He's asking that, how did Ambedkar's advocacy for the land reforms and the Hindu Code Bill impact India's economic development, and what challenges remain in implementing these reforms today?
Now, as far as the land reform is concerned, Dr. Ambedkar was obviously in support of redistribution of land to the landless. And untouchable were one section which was landless, but there were Shudras who were landless. So he proposed the land distribution through land reform policy in 1930s. He had set up an independent Labour Party in 1937. So through that political party, even Scheduled Caste Federation, the Independent Labour Party was converted into Scheduled Caste Federation in 1942. On the platform of both the party, he asked for the land distribution. And at that time, he argued that there is a lot of millions of cultivable wasteland. A land which is government land, public land, is not cultivated, is lying waste. It can be cultivated. This land should be distributed to the landless. He was also in support of land reform, but he was not very optimistic that the land reform will help the untouchable and this other section. And that is what precisely has happened. Dalit landlessness is still continued, is very high. Land reform has not helped them much. OBC had been beneficiary of land reform. Therefore, he proposed the nationalization of land and the redistribution of land. So his arguments are correct that land reform has not helped, and therefore the issue of landlessness still persists, and government should deal with that. Government is trying, but I think nothing much is coming out of that. Then what was your labor? Labor, of course, labor and Hindu Code bill you are asking. For labor, I have mentioned that he has taken several decisions for the labor, regulation of wages. He brought the concept of minimum wage. He decided the working hours. He brought a particular provision where women were debarred from working during night time in the mines. Now that policy has been reversed by the UP government. Women are allowed also now, they can work during night time also. But then job security, social security, medical insurance, employment exchange. So he brought several of decision. Tripartite agreement between the industry, government, and the union. These are several concepts that he brought. So he brought several things for the labor, but as a part of the economic plan, he said that the plan should be such that it helps labor. And it helps labor means what? The plan should, economic development should increase the employment so that the labor get benefit. So these are some of the suggestions that he has made. For Hindu Code bill, you know that he was a labor law minister, and he knew that not only the untouchable will deny right to property and education, but women were denied right to education and property. A woman did not have a right to vote, right to divorce, child marriage, sati system, and widowhood. These were the very ugly practices that we had. Those were banned by the British, but right to property, right to education, widowhood, widow remarriage, and all these, there are several rights for the woman he brought under the Hindu Code bill. And gradually they were implemented by the Congress. But Ambedkar was very unhappy that the whole entire bill was not brought, so he resigned on the question of women. The Indian woman, particularly Hindu women, do not know that Ambedkar, in fact, is the forefather of the proponent of the woman's right. They should worship him and praise him, but Hindu women do not do it much. In fact, it is the woman delegation which went to Ambedkar that why you are bringing the Hindu Code bill, because it's a fake Hindu religion. Then Dr. Ambedkar asked some of those women, have you read the bill? They said no. So there is everything for you here. Then he said, who told you? He said, our husband told us that this goes against the Hindu religion. But this was for the right of the woman. So that's a tragedy we have. Even today now, in Kerala, the women were not allowed to enter into the temple. So that continues. But Dr. Ambedkar did as much for scheduled caste as much he did for women. Please go ahead.
So another question is coming from Nancy Kaushik. She's asking that what are your thoughts on Dr. Ambedkar's proposal for the balanced growth of agriculture and industry? And do you believe that contemporary India reflects these ideals on a global scale?
Oh, yes, very much. I think In the first fire plan, in the fourth fire plan also, and in the second fire plan, throughout we have placed our balanced emphasis on industry and agriculture. In the second fire plan, of course, we had a heavy focus on agriculture, on industry, but throughout we have maintained this balance. So you will see that while we develop a plan for industrial development, industrialization in a big way, and we are enjoying the fruits of that early industrialization through the active role of the state. We also emphasize on agriculture, and we developed we invested in research in the agriculture technology. The result was we got a biochemical technology, yielding variety of seed, hybrid variety of seed, pesticides, and chemical fertilizer. This is called biochemical technology. Now that has increased the productivity in agriculture several times. Our yield in Punjab in wheat was 5 quintal per acre. Now under the new hybrid, it was 15, 16, 17 quintal. Now, Dr. Ambedkar had asked for the capital investment in agriculture in the form of new input. So now the Green Revolution has changed the picture altogether. We were living sheep to mouth. It is called sheep to mouth because we were waiting for the wheat to come from USA in early 60s to feed our people. But after 71 Green Revolution, we became to a greater extent self-sufficient. So we emphasize agriculture along with industry. And that policy is still going on, I think.
Okay, so we proceed with another question that is coming from Suhani Yadav. She's asking that in what ways did Dr. Ambedkar approach to the water management and policy depart from the traditional method, and what impact did his ideas have on promoting the social justice and equality in these areas?
Now, water and power policy was basically to expand the water resources, which will benefit agriculture, industry, navigation, hydroelectric power. And electricity policy was brought under the state control to increase the supply of electricity and power. Now, these are this expansion of irrigation facility and hydroelectric power benefit both. It benefit the industrial development and agriculture development, because water for agriculture, power for agriculture benefit agriculture, and then the drinking water and the power help the industries. And to the extent, the small and marginal farmer, they get water and irrigation, they are also helped. And if the agriculture development takes place, industrial development takes place, the employment increases. And those who are without, those who are casual laborer and without any resources, they also benefit through employment. Yeah, so there are connection between the water and power policy. But important point is that the strategy and approach of water and power development, which Dr. Ambedkar proposed at that time, that was very important. That was a pioneering approach, which still continues today. Some of them is neglected. Ambedkar is very unhappy about that. Navigation we have neglected. The naval transport, the navigation through rivers, for example, to Ganga, through Yamuna, and river navigation. Ambedkar was very keen on that.
Okay, so we proceed to another question coming from Abhishek Jaiswal. He's asking, why is there a lack of the academic focus on Ambedkar's idea regarding economic development, equality, and women's rights?
Well, I think Dr. Ambedkar has suffered from exclusion by the academics. Yeah, there is a discrimination of the untouchable from access to public amenities and several spheres. They suffer discrimination. There is a discrimination in academic also. So our academic, if you look at the university and colleges, they do not teach Dr. Ambedkar. Ambedkar has a massive literature. 22 volumes have been brought out by Maharashtra government, and it covers, sociology, anthropology, politics, constitution, economics, religion, philosophy. But it is not being taught. There is a discrimination there. I can just count the book. In sociology, who were Shudra, big bulky book. who were untouchable. In politics, thoughts on Pakistan, communal deadlock and way to solve. People even do not know what is communal deadlock and way to solve. It's a book on minorities and politics. Then Buddha and his Dhamma, his marvelous book on religion and philosophy. Annihilation of caste. No leader, I am emphasizing, has written as much as Dr. Ambedkar has written. And his contribution in the constitution, there is no limit to it. Then on street, let me, that you asked me a very interesting question. You take any issue that emerged during the course of 1920 to 1950. Dr. Ambedkar died in 1956. During this, all the issues, he wrote on each of the issues. And let me give you, from at the age of 22, 23, when he was in Columbia University, he wrote a paper, Caste in India. Marvelous paper. At that age, he was just doing. Then he came to London. Then he wrote a review of Bertrand Russell's book. Then in 1918, he wrote this paper on agriculture, which I share with you. It's a theory of agriculture development. Then he wrote a book on thoughts on Pakistan, dealing with the issue of minorities. Then he wrote a book on who were Shudras, their origin. Then he wrote a book on who were untouchable. Then the state reorganization question came, one language, one state. Dr. Ambedkar took a different position and he wrote a book, Thoughts on Linguistic State. Then on Hindu Code Bill. Then a book on Buddhism. You name it, any issue you name it, Dr. Ambedkar has a book. No person, no political person has written as much as Dr. Ambedkar has written. But equally, he is the person who has been neglected and excluded in universities. Now, therefore, effort is being made to include him in the universities and the colleges for his teaching gradually. In fact, University Grant Commission, when I was the chairman, at that time introduced a scheme. It was there earlier, but I expanded it. That is to incentivize the university and colleges to teach our own domestic thinker. So we created what is called chair, Ambedkar chair, Gandhi chair, Rabindranath Tagore chair, Vidyasagar chair, Nehruji chair. So these are some of our best thinkers. They are not taught. So we give the funding to the university and colleges and ask them to teach, undertake research. Research on women and teaching was neglected by the universities. It is only recently, 30 years before. UGC took a decision to set up 70 centers in women's studies. And there are today 70 centers open in the universities. There was an attempt by the recently UGC to reduce this center, but there was a protest by women, so they are retained. I set up 32 centers for social exclusion and inclusive policy. Their funding has been withdrawn now. Epoch making. This scheme of teaching Ambedkar and others in the university is called epoch making scheme. This has been stopped by this government. So there is no incentive to teach this. So that has been our practice to exclude Dr. Ambedkar from the academic.
Okay, so if anyone have any more questions, please do ask. Otherwise, we will end the question answer round here only. I think that's all we have for the question answer round, sir. So I will invite Jyotsna ma'am.
So, sir, it was a very wonderful lecture, as was expected. Thank you so much. As Dr. Ambedkar did a very great work, academic work, and he has a very good academic contribution in all the disciplines. So the purpose behind this lecture was, let's our student come to know his contribution in economics. And it's a very wonderful lecture. Thank you so much. It has been such an honor to be part of this wonderful event. On behalf of our Honorable Principal Ma'am, staff, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the guest of the speaker, Professor Sukhdev Tharat, for accepting our invitation and giving us valuable time and this information. This lecture has been really informative, enriching, and inspiring us to work patiently and earnestly in the field of academics. Thank you so much, sir, for always being generous toward the academic community, no matter what. I would like to extend my thanks to our principal ma'am, Professor Sadhna Sharma, our senior teacher, IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shobha Sinha, and our senior teacher, our co-conveners, and this event organizing team, other faculty member, and all the organizer and attendee for their effort to make this lecture a great success. Finally, I would like to thank all of the present here for making the time to be with us today and helping us make this event a grand success. Thank you so much, and accept my heartfelt gratitude from my side, Jyotsna. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would request Sir, IQAC Coordinator Shubha ma'am, TIC Dr. Jyotsna, and organizing members to switch on their camera for a group photograph as a memento of this enlightening webinar. Thank you all. All the attendees kindly note that a link to a feedback form will shortly be provided in the chat box. We request you all to fill the form as it will serve as a confirmation of your attendance in today's event. May I now invite Nancy Kaushik, President of the Economics Department, to conclude the event.
Shall I close down now? Shall I leave now?
Yes, sir, if you want. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm vote of thanks to all of you for attending today's event on the distinguished lecture on economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. First and foremost, I would like to express our deep gratitude to our guest speaker, Professor Sukhdev Tharat. His lecture on the economic ideas of Dr. Ambedkar was both informative and insightful. We are grateful for his scholarship and for imparting his knowledge with us. I would also like to extend our thanks to our principal, Professor Sadhna Sharma ma'am, IQAC coordinator Dr. Shobha Sinha ma'am, teacher in charge Dr. Jyotsna ma'am, our senior teachers, co-conveners of this event, other faculty members, and all the organizers and attendees for their efforts to make this lecture a great success. We hope that this event has inspired you to continue exploring the intersection of economics and social justice. Thank you once again for joining us today. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And I request everyone to please fill the feedback form that is in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you to all my students, my colleagues, and who is present here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Kalpana, should we wind up?
हेलो हमारी आवाज जा रही है मैम?
जी, I can hear you.